Hey, my name is Beau. I am a musician and music teacher, and in this video, I want to talk about practice and problem solving. So, a lot of the times from beginner or intermediate students, I get the question when they're thinking about how to practice and actually starting to maybe explore some kind of strategy toward how to practice effectively. I'll get asked the question like, how many times should I play this passage to learn it? Or for how long should I practice this passage? So maybe they're working on 8 bars of a new piece and they're wondering, okay, to learn this effectively, do I have to play it 10 times in a row? Do I have to practice it for 20 minutes every day? And, surprisingly, if you look into the research about this, there's not great answers. And really, the reason that there isn't a great answer to this is because the question is actually super complicated. It's going to depend on your background knowledge. So, for example, if I learn, a Bach piece that's in the Royal Conservatory of Music's graded curriculum, 5 or 6, it's probably not going to take me that long to learn it compared to a student who is actually at grade 5 or 6 level, and that's a challenging piece for them. And so you're not comparing apples to apples, you're comparing apples to oranges. And so my background knowledge as a classical guitarist is going to make it so that a lot of the patterns, a lot of the motor movements have already really been learned. A lot of the audiation concepts, I might already have the rhythms in my audiation vocabulary. I already have the chord progressions and the tonality and stuff in my vocabulary and have mastered it. But for a new student or for an intermediate student, they really have to stretch themselves to be able to play that. And so obviously, you're not going to be able to make a blanket statement for all kinds of musicians how many repetitions they're going to need to play something or how much time they're going to need to play something. And so this is why when you're looking at practicing, it's not actually that effective to think about the amount of time you spend working on a passage or even the amount of repetitions that you spend working on a passage. And I'll put a little star next to that last point because we'll come back to it. So what is a more effective way to think about practicing and getting things done in the practice room, learning pieces, learning techniques? And really the emphasis you want to take is towards problem solving. So I noticed this about maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I really started to read more about effective practice, maybe even longer, 6 or 7 years ago, but something in that range. I started trying to find as many interviews I could find on the topic, as many books as I could find on the topic, classical musicians, jazz musicians mainly. But, I kept being frustrated by the lack of direct response. I mean, I wanted an answer, how many times do I play this? And I wanted an answer, how long do I have to play this? And the really good classical musicians, there isn't an answer like this. I think there's a Yo-Yo Ma masterclass or interview out there where, his answer is profoundly simple, but I think it points at the difference in his thinking. He said something like, he plays something, listens to it, and thinks to himself, well, that doesn't sound so good, so how do I fix it? And, when you're in this mindset of thinking about how many reps and how much time, that answer is infuriating because it's not the type of answer you want. You want the answer formatted in a different way. But you should pay attention to what Yo-Yo Ma is saying because it's actually a very profound way of looking at things in the sense that you don't need to count reps. You don't need to count time you're working on things. You need to solve problems in the practice room. I believe his name is Scott Tennant, the author of Pumping Nylon, the fabulous classical guitarist. He talks about the same kind of thing. Really what you're doing in a practice session is, when you're working on repertoire specifically, you have a piece and there's going to be all these problem sections. And there could be different kinds of problems. There could be technical problems. There could be more psychic audiation problems. Like you don't even know what the chord progression is and you're missing out on some kind of musical gesture because you're not audiating the chord progression or the rhythm is screwed up or whatever. And what he talks about is, he goes through the piece and he takes one problem at a time, solves the problem, and if it's a technique problem, he drills it on the instrument, so plays it many times in a row. You do need to play things many times if it's a motor challenge. The human motor system, when you're doing something that's brand new, you can't do it once or twice. We're talking lots of repetition. But the point is that before you start engaging in a lot of repetition and drilling, you want to actually be thinking about why am I having the problem I'm having? Even just like a very basic example that's out of context. Let's say I had this chord in a song, this kind of F Lydian kind of, and maybe it's not coming out right. Maybe it's coming out like, and I need to actually investigate what the heck is going on. Why is this not working? I might realize like, oh, it's actually my third finger. When I get to this chord, my ring finger is not coming down close enough to the fret. I'm too far back here. And you need to take some time in the practice room and slow down and sort out what's actually causing problems. And this is why it's so helpful to have a teacher, because really when you're in a lesson with a teacher, what's happening is you have a whole nother human brain that's hopefully more skilled than you, taking a look at what you're doing. So you don't need to be trying to analyze your playing while you're playing. Just play something honestly, see what happens. Your teacher can really kind of hone down on the problem. And a good teacher can tell the difference between, is this a rhythmic problem? Is this a technique problem? Is this a mindset problem? Are you looking at this part like it's really hard and unattainable to do and you just need to kind of chill out a little bit and look at it in a different way? That does actually happen. Sometimes when people are trying to play things that are very fast, they tighten up and tense up and they psych themselves out. Or if a singer is trying to sing a really high note and that note is a little bit higher than all the other notes in the piece, they kind of develop a weird relationship with that note. That note becomes this kind of panic spot in the song, and they build it up and they freak out about it. And so you might need a mindset shift so you're not really kind of hyper focusing on that note and the fact that it's more challenging than everything else. So that can actually be a problem that shows up. And so you need to focus on problem solving before you get into drilling. And the problem, there's all kinds of different problems that can arise. This video is not dedicated to any specific instrument. I mean, a classical guitarist is going to have different problems than a saxophone player just because of the nature of the technique of the instrument. I mean, most instruments have some kind of coordination involved. On the guitar, usually two hands are having to coordinate. On the piano, two separate lines. On a saxophone, the mouth and the embouchure and the breathing apparatus and the fingers and the audiation. I mean, all that's being coordinated. So there's kind of coordination issues just unilaterally across the board. But you need to take a step back and figure out what you're doing. And, this can be where if you enter a practice room with a giant task list, like I need to do this and I need to do this and I need to do this, I have personally found it very effective to put some kind of time limit on things. Say I'm going to work on this for 5 or 10 minutes and then move on. I'm going to work on this for 5 or 10 minutes and then move on. But really what you want to do when you're problem solving is kind of don't worry about moving on to the next thing. I mean, I wouldn't recommend staying on one little thing for like a half an hour or anything like that. You want to dedicate maybe 5 or 10 minutes to solving something, but pull out your phone, pull out your iPad, record yourself doing it, videotape yourself doing it, listen. I would do a listen back to it where you're just listening to the sound. So is it the sound I was going for? Is it the expression I was going for? Are the notes coming out clear? Is the technique okay? And then also videotape yourself, because you can learn some other things about your posture and your technique that you might not notice just from your first person's perspective while you're playing. And so filming yourself and recording yourself, some combination of those, is a really fantastic tool. It's a really underutilized tool in terms of problem solving. Obviously, having a teacher that can critique your playing is, basically like taking steroids for getting better at music. But, short of having a teacher, and in addition to having a teacher, you should get in the habit of, it doesn't have to be everything you're working on, but, a couple things per week, a couple challenging sections, record yourself, watch yourself play it, try to do some kind of problem solving, rinse and repeat. And then once you've kind of found the solution and you're like, oh, it's my third finger is not arriving on time, I need to fix this, then you start drilling that so that movement is more automatic. And I think some people, they just rush too soon to the drilling. They just start playing things 10 times in a row, 15, 20 plus times in a row. And that's fine. You probably do need to do that if it's a really difficult skill that you've never learned and you're having to kind of install it in your nervous system. There's nothing wrong with some kind of drilling or high repetition practice, but you need to figure out what the problem is first. A lot of the times, people's problem is not even a technique thing. They just can't audiate the song. So, how are you going to play a song convincingly on the instrument and express yourself when you can't even mentally hear what should be happening before it's happening and mold the sound and shape the sound? If you don't have an intuitive sense of like, okay, I need the phrase to grow like this and go like that and, staccato here and pull back, you need to have an oral representation of what you're trying to do. And so to fix that problem, you need to listen to the song more. If you're not able to play the song or look at a piece of sheet music and audiate it and hear it, you need your teacher to play it for you, give you examples. You need to find lots of recordings. I mean, I've talked about this before on the channel. Some teachers are a bit paranoid about having their students listen to songs while they're learning them because they don't want their phrasing to be overly influenced by one interpretation. Totally valid point, but I think the stakes are high enough that this issue that people have of not being able to audiate the music that they're playing is such a profound issue for so many students. Just find like 10 recordings of the song. Or if you're a teacher and you're going to provide recordings for your student, send them a couple recordings where you phrase it quite differently. And so they're not going to be kind of pinned down to interpreting the song in a certain way. And that's actually that's a problem that more people have than they realize, is that you're just not audiating the song properly. So we're often quick to assume it's a technical issue when a lot of the time it's just an audiation issue. You can't hear the melody, you can't audiate the chord progression, the rhythm is weird, and you need to get that sorted out. And the only way you're going to do that is by listening to someone else play it, or by you sorting it out in your mind. But if it is a technique problem, you're gonna have to play it a lot. And then what you're gonna want to do is, if this is a technical challenge and you're finding it very difficult to play this, but you have some drive and you're willing to stick with it and be persistent, I recommend grab a notebook or a Google Doc if you want to. Write down what you're working on. So at the top of the page, I'm working on this little section, bar 9 of the current Bach piece I'm working on, or whatever jazz piece or whatever you're doing. Isolate the problem and describe what the problem is. I can't play this fast enough. There's some kind of issue when I play this chord. I can't do it. And then what you want to do is try different practice techniques. Try, super high repetition practice, 30 times in a row. Try filming yourself. Try using interleaving. Try playing with a metronome. Slow practice, building the practice up. Try doing rhythmic practice where you play in different rhythms. But what you want to do is document what you do. Because if you just bring the house down and try everything that you can possibly think of, you're not going to figure out what actually solves the problem. What you want to do is try 1 or 2 of these, a day, and do them for a couple days, and then take note of whether the problem gets fixed or not. And what starts to happen over time is you start to notice certain types of problems, like maybe speeding a song up or something like that, or solving some kind of, for a guitarist, like just being able to pull off a different chord with your left hand. You'll start to notice certain practice techniques dependably solve certain problems for you. And so it's great if your favorite classical guitarist has a certain practice technique that solves their problems. But if you do that and it doesn't solve your problems, then you need to keep going. And this is kind of the issue with taking practice advice from other people that's too inflexible or too dogmatic. If someone says, well, what I do to learn a piece is I play every little section 6 times in a row, and then I can play the piece. I mean, if you try to do that and it doesn't work, then what do? You're kind of out of luck. So a really simple and kind of empirical way to go after this is document, if you have, 2 pages or 10 pages or 30 pages of music, of repertoire that you're trying to learn, find the biggest problem spots in your pieces. You could probably list 100, but maybe for now just list like 5, because you're going to try to solve these one at a time. And find 5 of the biggest problem spots in your pieces that if they were solved, your pieces would sound more enjoyable for the listener and you would be more satisfied with your performance. Document it in the notebook. Give 1 whole page for each problem, or a half page for each problem. Describe to yourself what the problem is, and then document what interventions you attempt to apply and when you do it. So, say maybe Monday, Tuesday, you try playing in altered rhythms. Wednesday, Thursday, you try playing, half speed at the metronome, 3/4 speed, full speed, 125% of the speed. So you ratchet the speed up and you do that kind of thing. Document what you're doing, and then you will find out if something doesn't work. Often, if something doesn't solve a problem within a couple days or within a few practice sessions, it's not going to solve the problem. So don't keep doing more of that. And that, I have another video about the distinction between deliberate practice and naive practice, but this is the spirit of deliberate and purposeful practice, is that you're solving problems and getting better at doing things. You're not assuming that just putting in reps is going to solve problems. So If you've played a little section 10 times a day for the last week and you still can't play it, it's unlikely that continuing to do that will make you play it. And it's kind of, it turns practice into this like really not enjoyable activity. But when you are documenting, your problem solving and you're trying things, you have this sense of hope, you have this sense of encouragement. You're like, I don't know if what I'm doing today is going to work, but if it doesn't work, I'm going to try the next thing. If it doesn't work, I'm going to try the next thing. And that feels very motivating. I remember this Bach piece I was learning, this jig in E minor. I think it's from the 996 suite. It's a difficult piece for me anyway to play at full tempo. There were some weird chord shapes that I had actually never really encountered at that speed before. And I had to try tons of things. I went through a few weeks of doing this kind of thing. And eventually what I found that solved it was pretty crazy. I mean, I basically just played it a ton of times throughout the day, many different ways. I had to do rhythmic practice. I had to do interleaved practice. I had to do, at tempo practice and chaining. I had to do like 5 different things. And I had to do it for like a week or two at a really high dose. I did it before I went to work in the morning. I mentally practiced while I was at work on all of my breaks. I did it when I came home. I did it before I went to bed. I just had to do that for like 4 or 5 days, and then I could just play it. And now I haven't practiced it in probably like a month, and I could pick up the guitar and I could do it. But I had to go through that problem solving process to arrive at that. I didn't know that that's what it took to play that kind of thing for me. Now, if I encounter something like that in the future, it's likely I won't have to do that again because I will have the motor movements already down. And so, that's just a quick look at problem solving in the practice room and some different ways about thinking about practicing. But it's a much better way to go about learning difficult repertoire compared to just, thinking you need to do something for 20 minutes a day arbitrarily or for, 10 reps on every line arbitrarily. You can actually waste a lot of time practicing like that, because if your piece is 20 pages long and you're going to spend 10 minutes playing every little section, you're going to spend a lot of time doing things you can already do. Generally just learn the piece and then go after the parts that are difficult and engage in this radical experimentation, and you'll be a lot better off for it. So I'll sign off here. My name is Beau. I'm a musician and music teacher. I offer online piano lessons and guitar lessons. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. You can head to my website and shoot me an email as well if you prefer. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day.